This is Gary Soretsky, and I'm here in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, with Walt Dzialo and Kathlinda Soretsky on August 2nd, 2011, for an interview by Kathy of Walt about the history of Colonial Heights. Kathy?
Hi. Well, our wonderful neighbor Walt and his wonderful wife Dot agreed to come over and talk to us about things because our wonderful daughter Anya was over at Walt and Dot's the other day, and she came home with so many interesting stories that we thought that for sure Walt should be recorded and tell the story so we would have recording and everybody could know some of the things that you know. Now, Walt, when were you born? Which
1927.
1927. And your early childhood, what do you remember about that? Where did you live? And
I was born in Trenton, and I was born in a Polish Falcons, and my father had a place there. It was a dance, and they sold pianos, and it was one of the first movie houses.
and that's where your house was there?
No,
Your
I
business?
didn't. No, it was. That's where. I don't remember. And they used to have movies there, and they were only nickel. My father they used to call him Nickel John, And my mother sold tickets, and they had another movie house on Paul Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes
Paul Avenue was where St. James Church
yes, and
was.
they had a movie house similar to that. And sometimes they would have somebody on a bicycle bring a big reel of they'd have to maybe wait for the other part of the movie.
Oh.
I mean, it was like,
Oh.
so these are stories, that I had. And right at that time, like the Depression pretty well hit. The bottom fell out of everything. And I know that I was about 1 or 2 years old, and I lived in where the Lawrence Shopping Center is. I don't remember that, but
Oh.
there was a house there, and then they moved it up further. And things was tough. And then we went into Hamilton Township, and I think we must have moved about every year. We must have moved.
So your father didn't have that business anymore?
Oh,
did
they lost
pianos?
everything. He lost
Yeah.
everything. In other words, he had a pretty good business going. He built a whole bunch of houses on Pennsylvania Avenue. He was a big builder then, at that time. And I don't know how they ever built all that stuff because they didn't have no electric tools. It was all hand stuff. And they built all these fancy, they got all kind of moldings on these houses years ago.
Yeah.
And today, got all kind of fancy stuff. And the
Well,
house
people
falls.
did do wonderful
Yeah.
things without all the
Yeah.
technology and electricity, that's true. Funny though what you say about he lost his piano business, because when
Yeah.
my father used to talk about the Depression, one of the biggest things that impacted him was they had a player piano, and during the Depression they couldn't pay for it anymore, and he always talked about the day they came and took the player piano out of the house.
Well, because
Very sad.
Because I remember as a kid that they had, like when they moved stuff, and they had all these rolls of all the, that you put in the piano, and they had all the holes, I guess, where it got the voice out of it. And I used to have them, I was about 4 or 5, had them all over everything. and then I went to,
Yeah, where'd you go to school? First memory of school?
I started in
Farmingdale.
Farmingdale School, which they tore down now. But what makes it different about that? I remember it says on one side, boys and girls. Now, we all went to school as in the classroom, boys and girls together, like they do over here. But when we went to play, it was like I left there in first grade, over to number 4. But the girls played by themselves, and it seemed odd, everybody.
Well, I was born in 1947, and the same was true when I went to Slackwood School. And you can still see,
It's still on
it says a beautiful sign in the cement that says girls, and there was a girls' entrance and a boys' entrance.
But like Mrs. Saley, I give her credit for all the way around, because her
Now
heart.
tell, who was Mrs. Salem?
Mrs. Saley was the principal of number 4 school, and she was involved in other schools,
I think she was the
Yeah.
principal at Slackwood too.
and
And she lived where?
she lived on the end of Valley Forge, where
And-
Jack lived in.
And Route 1. She
Yeah.
had the house on the south corner.
Yeah, and, well, this school was only a 4-room schoolhouse, and when I went to 7th, she had kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd, all in one room. 3rd and 4th was in another room, which 3rd and 4th was separate teacher. 5th and 6th was another teacher. And Mrs. Saley had 7th and 8th.
Oh.
So she would be on like so many aisles over here, and she would teach you here, and you give you this stuff here, but you would be listening to the other class over there. And it was, when I was in 7th, there was only 2 boys. There was like 7 girls. There was like about 7 in the class, that's all there was.
And where was that school? Where was it located?
On Route 1. It goes around Carnegie Road, I guess if you go down, it would be for Mrs. G's.
Mm-hmm.
And,
On the other side of
yeah,
the highway
yeah.
from Mrs. G's. And what was that school called? Do you know?
What it's called? Number 4.
Oh,
That's
number
all they,
4.
well, they used to laugh at us too, that we go to school at Baker's Basin, and nobody even, they would laugh, say, Baker's Basin, what is that? And all at once when they built the inspection station and everything else, is Baker's Basin, it was big.
Mm-hmm.
And all at once it wasn't no joke no more.
And what did you tell me one time about, was the canal, the little canal keeper's house around there too?
Well, that's where I lived there. Where the canal, in other words, the bridge tender.
The bridge tender, well, what was that all about?
Well, these bridges, even I'll go a little further back with, I remember as about maybe 3 years old, I remember the canal bridge over here, and the bridge used to turn, and they would let boats through.
Under Cherry Tree Lane.
Yeah, Cherry Tree
At
Lane.
the end of Cherry Tree Lane.
And Cherry Tree Lane used to go all the way through and around and come back up to where the bridge is, where Sweetbriar in Hamilton.
Really?
And there wasn't
Before
no,
Whitehead Road. There wasn't any Whitehead Road then.
White Road came about in about 54, 55.
Yeah, at that time Cherry Tree Lane was the way
It
to
was
cross.
everything,
Oh,
everything.
so what boats came on that canal?
That most, well, I read some of the thing that they even had in Lawrence thing had almost all the coal that went to New York went through there. It comes through the canal from,
Pennsylvania down the river,
uh,
down the Delaware, and then on the canal past here to go to the Raritan River, and then from the Raritan River to New York.
And was it the same width that it is now, or it
Yeah.
was bigger?
No, it's
They-
the same.
the canal, part of the canal they filled in. The canal, the part that went to Bordentown, you ride on it when you go on Route 1. They filled, it was a canal, they filled it in, after they dug it out again, and it's part of the main Route 1, by Perry Street, when you go Perry Street. And that was the canal bed. And then part of the canal, you can see even over here that they have like blocked off, in other words, the state owned the property, so that's when they made Route 1. I guess they got to all use their own property, the land was made for, you wouldn't have to go into getting any, buy more land.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because the canal used to be a company, it was a canal company, and then there was a lot of competition from the railroad, because the railroad even built the road the railroad went right alongside of it. And there was a lot of competition, and it wound up that the railroad owned it after a while. They took it over. And then the railroad couldn't maintain bridges. They didn't want to maintain it. It was too costly. So they sold everything to the state. So the state would take over the bridges. They made it, and they say now, even the book that I read, that canal is worth more with the water than it was originally when it was built for transportation. In other words, the water for
Because
Princeton,
of the water.
they use the water. I guess Princeton takes it out of there.
And speaking of Princeton, you said that after you finished with school up to, what, 8th or 9th grade, then it was time for high school,
Yeah.
and you went,
Well, we had to go from Carnegie Road. We had to walk all the way where Mrs. G's is. You know where Mrs. G's? There was a little candy store. We used to stay in there, and then we had a bus that didn't have no heat in it, and it was like 9 miles to go on a bus to Princeton.
to Princeton High
Now,
School.
if you got there late or whatever it is, you didn't go to school. No, who's going to take you to school from there? It was like they would threaten you. They have to stay after school. And not, you don't want to stay after school. That was a long walk for 9 miles.
So at Princeton High, was that a nice high school?
It was-
your
it was-
memory?
The high school was beautiful. I went there a few years back, and it's like all this modern construction, even like Lawrence High. It might look good, but it don't have the stuff that was used to when they built, years ago. When they put it was just it's more went into the school instead of just because even at Lawrence School, a few years back that they had to rebuild it and all because they said they had to put sump pumps on the roof to pump the water off of it.
Oh,
So we didn't have schools that, I guess years ago like that. They were made better.
well,
Yeah.
I went to Trenton High School, and I agree with you, that was a very well-constructed school. It had a lot of embellishments, marble, alcoves,
Yeah,
very, very special.
And today you look at some of these schools, I see a lot more in Hampton. That it's more like plywood, just nailed together, and a roof that's just about hanging on there at one story, and that's no quality or nothing in there. Yeah, so.
Now,
Yeah.
how about, right now, we're in the Anderson Kapner house, our house where we live. It dates back to 1764, but tell me what you remember about this house.
Well, I remember when I first moved over there, I was there a couple of years, and Dolpers, they were getting a bill for taxes. It was exorbitant, and they says they could only get $9,000 for this house. That's all it was worth because it was falling apart. And they wanted the taxes, I guess, for maybe 19,000 or whatever it was. And then Mrs. Nash, they bought it and they started
So
restoring.
when did Mrs. Nash buy it?
60s.
It had to be after the girls were born because we had a pool in our yard.
Yeah,
And
the
the
girls,
from
the
here.
girls
went
used
in
to
the
go
pool.
on the pool, so it was
1960s.
60.
60 something.
Yeah, it had to be after,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the Nashes, Winona and John Nash, bought it from the Dolphers.
Yeah.
And the Dolphers used to rent rooms here in the
I don't know about Dolphers, but maybe before then, because it was, I think the people it was in the Dolpher family, I guess, all along. But it was falling apart. It was,
Mhm. And what did you say about the milkman?
he stayed, our milkman said he stayed here, when he came from France.
So
And-
he might have rented a
Yeah,
room
right.
before
Yeah.
the Dolphers that
Yeah, well, that's,
you knew. and I knew because I think Ruthie was the daughter that I knew of the Doffer family. There were two girls that I remember, and that was probably in the 50s, I would say.
Because some of them, one of them, I think, was in a state police or something that, you know. But they pretty well stayed by themselves here. And,
But it was falling apart.
About Ohio Avenue.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was Ohio Avenue like at that time?
It's not too much different, but, well, they had, instead of like on Valley Forge Avenue, instead of the bumps you got on the road today, they had hollows in there. And even here, they had hollows. In other words, what it was, I guess the township didn't have any gutter, no, for sewage or anything else. The water would run right on across and right into the woods. And they had the dips. And they even had a sign that even college kids would, they would go down and try to steal the signs, you know, they you know, the signs for dip or anything else, you know. Yeah, so they caught them trying to pick the signs.
And what had you said to Anya about the dump or the indentation there at,
Where the park is now?
Well, Mrs. Nay showed me a map, and I just figured she gave most of the stuff to you guys, I thought maybe. And it showed the map, half of Ohio Avenue was missing. And I guess whatever they were taking, whatever they took out, gravel, whatever it is, because that was like a big pit. And the kids, I mean, they all went down there, they all played there, and they, even some of the vines up there, they were like rope, and they used to swing on them, and all this junk that they used to dump in there, the kids would swing on it, and it would hold them. But actually the cops came over later because it was too dangerous, and they chopped all that out of there. In other words, they'd get killed in there.
no, I can remember as a little girl playing and we used to go down and it was a,
It was a big hole.
yeah,
Did it go down right from the road? Or-
not ultra steep, because there was a lot of
About
debris.
half of that park, where it's mound up, that's where the drop off would be. It was a big drop off down there. And it was a big hole down there. Yeah.
So who were some of the people who lived around you?
Well, we used to have a mayor that used to live, one of the Orange Township mayors. I bet you don't know where he lived. He lived right on the corner of Valley Forge,
Mr. Cunningham.
Cunningham. You look in, you can see his picture, I guess, in the town hall. He's one of the mayors, and he was here for quite a while. He was a shop teacher in Trent High.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think the neighborhood or the people who live in the neighborhood, has that changed?
Yes, actually, it was great people no matter who, but there was like a lot of Italians and different ones, and now it's like a mixed neighborhood, but they're all great. They all came in and they all care. They seem to care. The only houses that don't do good is the ones that they rent, and they seem to be a problem. But otherwise, if the people buy, and actually, you know yourself how great the neighbors are, right?
Yeah,
around
they
you.
are
Yeah.
really very sincere,
Yeah.
do anything for you people. But there are more rental properties. I think when I was a kid, I don't remember any of the houses being rented. People bought the house and lived there.
Because Route 1, this is alternate Route 1 now, that used to be the main road. And I guess they had to, where the circle is, they used to have trucks, they had weight scales over there, weigh scales, they used to weigh trucks. The scale, it's right, I guess you still see the corner of it.
Oh, and that little,
The
that
little shed,
house.
the
Yeah,
little
yeah,
shed, I
that's
think
what
that
that
shed,
was for.
yeah, it was a weigh station.
And
And-
why were they weighing the trucks?
Well, I guess they do that way. They do that on Turnpike now and all, but I guess all the trucks don't come here now. They have more modern ways of weighing them now that they could do one wheel at a time or something.
Now, as far as the circle, do you remember that being a baseball field at any time?
Yes, Mr. Saley took, when we graduated, Mr. Saley took us, it was, the name of it was Dunfield.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the lottery commission,
Mm-hmm.
and that was one of the things she took the whole class. We could see a game in Dunfield. They had all these big lights in the back, and it was all fenced in around the back. That,
And who played ball there?
I guess it's local teams, you know, but it was, I guess, it was like the Thunder, Thunder,
Mm-hmm.
but, and I guess, I think the church still owns all the property, I think, over there. I think it's like a 99-year lease, I think it was. And
The diocese of Trenton.
Diocese of Trenton, I think, owns it.
Oh, where the lottery commission
Yeah,
is?
all that,
I used to own it.
yeah. Yeah. And then we had a dairy there. Remember the dairy?
Ice cream,
Yeah, they had good ice cream over there.
Casciani's,
Right there,
tomato
we
pie.
had-
Oh, yeah, Casciani's tomato pie, I do remember that on
Yeah, well, right.
Route 1,
Yeah,
and it was across from the Brunswick movie
yeah,
theater.
it was good.
That was in RKO, wasn't it, RKO Brunswick?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was Brunswick, RKO. They had three movies. Whoever built them, they had three different movies. They had one in Hampton. Well, there was three of them. There, one up by the other circle where everybody was scared to go in it, White Horse. Yeah, that's one circle.
Oh,
It's still bad.
yeah, yeah.
It's still bad.
How about the drive-in movie on alternate Route 1? Did you go to that?
Yes,
Lawrence Drive-In. I think.
yeah, it was. In fact, my daughter she would go there, and she would take my car, and I guess a whole bunch of kids used to go in the cars and all that stuff, and I guess they maybe even went in the trunk. I don't know how they ever got it, but you pulled up to the thing, and they had the speaker.
On a pole, and
Yeah.
there was a little,
Yeah,
where, a sound system, and you took it off and put it on your window. You rolled the window up a little bit and put the speaker there and watched the movie. Then they had an intermission and everybody went to get popcorn.
yeah, they advertised popcorn on their thing. And all that.
You'd want popcorn for sure. Now, what were you telling Anya about Civil War veterans?
Well, Mrs. Saley's mother, she was a do-gooder. She did all around, and she brought veterans and stuff from, and she would bring them into this number 4 school, and they would be up on the stage, and they must have been 90, 89, 90, whatever, they were up there, and most of them I couldn't even hear, but we got to meet them, and some of them couldn't hear anything. They had the cane, and you could hear them. They would pound. They would have to take the cane away because it was, they were up. But she would bring them like every year, and every year there would be 2 or 3 less in the school.
So what year do you think that was, more or less?
It must have been,
Decade,
In his 30s.
30s.
the 30s?
yeah, about 30.
And that was during school though, kind of as a civic
Well, Mrs. Saley,
lesson.
she had everything pretty well figured out because, in them days, today I guess everybody got a phone. There was only one phone in that school. And she had it set up for the 7th graders. And you would have to take turns answering that phone. You would be scared to death on that rate because she would make you get every information off of that phone because it was, it was part of communicating too. That you had to get everything off of that phone and, relay it
So
to
it was
her.
a big responsibility.
Yeah, in other words, it was that phone rang, it was.
Now, when did you get a telephone? Did you always have a
We had
phone
a,
or?
no, we got a phone here right away, but it was not good because we had a phone that was tied into, I think, where your mother lived, they're right near.
Mhm.
And we were on the party line, you had a
Yeah.
party line.
Mhm.
And my daughter would be on the phone and the lady on there would say, get off, and you get off. It was like,
Party line.
it was no good at all.
Do you
And
remember your telephone number?
we still have the same number we had when we moved.
Well, first, wasn't it 5 digits, then they put
Ex-
export or
yeah,
tuxedo
yeah,
or O
yeah.
in the front
Yeah,
as another 2 numbers?
yeah.
So
'Cause,
you had the same one? Same telephone
yeah,
number?
yeah, but they added, in other words, you didn't have the first 2 numbers, you just had the last. And as on Route 1, when you go down there, they came so much further with technology. As you went down Route 1, they had one side, it must have been all telephone lines. It was loaded with copper wire, like, the lines. It's not there, it must be in the ground. And, they must have technology, and it was all packed up with telephone.
And Route 1 was 2 lanes.
Three.
And
It
then,
was 3.
and before we got married, they were widening it.
Well, they started widening that before the war. There was real hard times. There was no jobs, and they called it WPA,
Mhm.
and I guess it was part of Franklin Roosevelt's thing, and to keep people working. And Route 1 used to have 3 lanes, and the lane in the middle, you would be passing. So if somebody come the other way and decided to pass through, there was head-on collisions on. They even had a sign up there, caution, 3 killed daily.
Ooh,
They had a sign right up on the road,
Really?
yeah.
gee,
And so,
dangerous.
so they had almost all the equipment that they were using to make the highway right, or where, on Carnegie Road. They used all that property. And they had technology, which I don't see now used. They had, as the tar strips was in the road, they dug the tar out and they put like a fire hose in there and blew air in it. And it pushed the whole,
Oh,
it pushed it over up the width of the hose, and then they put something between, and they kept, actually some of the highway that still is in there. And that when they got done moving the highway over, they drilled holes in, and because I watched them do it, and they drilled holes in and put mud in and covered it up. Now it's all like blacktop, I guess now. But they made more lanes in there. Then they had the grass divider,
mhm.
and which was bad because you could turn around anywhere you wanted in the middle of there, and the cars were trying to make a left, and the cars start on Route 1 were going higher speed, and they used to be banging into the back.
Did they have traffic lights?
The only traffic light that I remember is here, it's Slackwood. And the only reason they had that there, the firemen from Slackwood, some of them got killed. I know some got hurt real bad.
Mhm.
And you could go from all the way down, there was no lights at all. When we went to Princeton School, we used to go right down and we used to make a make a left right onto Quaker, where Quaker Road is, and there was no light, nothing there.
A lot fewer people.
Yeah, it was like,
This was the country,
yeah.
more or less.
And all that were the Mercer Mall, that was all farmland. Vaqueros they had beefalo, and they had a lot of chickens and stuff in there. And where Quaker Bridge Mall, when we used to go to school, there was houses, there was a garage where the guy used to fix cars and stuff, and we used to pick up the people from there. It was right where the mall is, like one of the entrances to them. So,
Didn't they have a name for that area? Was it Clarksville there or something?
it was Clarksville.
Clarksville was like the name of the village there,
Yeah.
where Quaker Bridge Mall is now.
They had, I guess, everything a little different. Even Lawrence Station used to be like a little siding where most people had farms and stuff and everything, and they used to buy feed over Shiders. It was a feed thing. There was a siding right by the railroad track. I think that where they have the training for they have fires there,
Mm-hmm.
and that used to be in that area. And we used to buy the feed, and I guess to entice the people to buy the feed, the bags were made with, like, you can make dishcloth and everything had all different like
Sure.
patterns on it. So
Yeah.
you got more than
Mhm.
the bag of feed.
You could make a little dress out
Yeah,
of
well, I don't know what
the
you can
feed
make.
bag.
Yeah, it was.
Or an
Yeah.
apron. Yeah, yeah. So then when World War II came about, do you remember the rationing?
Well, yes, you only got 4 gallons of gas. You had like 4 stickers, A, B, and C, and like trucks had a T. And you got 4 gallons. I guess that was, they would try to give it nothing, but they want you to keep buying a car, and you know, a car is a big cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
They would like you to keep it. So you would get 4 gallons. You didn't go hardly anywhere with 4 gallons.
4 gallons a
And
week or a month? A week?
Week, I guess. Well, I guess, you know, it couldn't be a month, because you can burn that much. You can,
Well,
Yeah.
nowadays.
So then they had to see if you had a job that was important, where you had to, because transportation even stinks in Trenton, in Lawrence yet. If you want, because where I lived, if we wanted to get a bus, we'd have to go to Lakelands, get a bus. We'd have to walk like a mile, they have to go, and if we go the other way, and which you don't hear nothing more about, there used to be, the end of the bus line was Hutchinson Mills. Well, that's what used to be, they had the Colonial Lakeland bus, and they were like the end of the line. So it was in the middle for us. We would have walked.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you were stuck.
So you had to either walk or ride a bike. But the rationing, they had, you were limited on like certain amount of stuff, but people were more involved in helping out, because people, even though people were getting killed every day, that people are not even, they don't even notice. The business goes on as usual today. And that was, the people were all involved.
Very different, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Because I think World War II, it was a good chance that you could have been talking German. It was that close to losing it. And now, the only kind of wars they have now, the United States or where it is, and it's not they're losing a lot of men, but it's nothing that's, you're gonna lose your country.
Close to home.
Lose your money.
Hmm?
Tell them about your first job.
My first
What
job.
was your first job?
I worked, got working papers from Lawrence. They had you had to get your worker papers from Lawrence. Then I got a job work for Lennox, and that was still during the war.
Oh, so what did you do there?
Well, I would like clean up the machines, and we'd make porcelain stuff or spark plugs for airplanes.
Oh, so they converted to.
Well, no, they continue making dishes right along. They never stopped.
Oh,
They were making dishes and stuff in the other part of the plant.
but they had a part where they
Yeah.
had things that
Yeah.
the war needed.
Tell them how you got to work from
I had to go take a bike ride every morning. I had to be from
way up the highway.
yeah, go down Route 1 and all the way had to go all the way down to Holden Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And the year I was doing that, part of where, I guess you had to have the bridge over Holden Avenue used to open up for the canal.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to have a big concrete thing up top to wait. You used to see them down the shore. You might have seen some of them, a lot of bridges that way down the shore. I think they got rid of them now too. Like a big concrete weight. And they needed a lot of that stuff for war, I guess. And they even had tracks in front. We had trolleys in Lawrence. And they took all the tracks out, and I guess they used it for wartime stuff.
Oh, the metal.
Yeah, the tracks. And
Did you say where you were living during World War II? Where did you
I
live?
lived at Carnegie Road, where
Oh, you were still there.
actually it was so far in the sticks, really it was, that that road that was in the back, it was mostly made out of cinders. And right off of Route 1, public service used to have, they manufactured their own gas. Now we got natural gas now. They had big tanks up there, and I guess Lawrence used to get the ashes. They would still be hot in the truck when they dump it, and they made more or less made the road out of it. And it was so tight, even if you met another car going the other way, you would have to almost, your bushes to hit the car and you to try to squeeze to get another car through there. It was that tight. But now they got street lights over there.
Did you have neighbors there, or you really were isolated?
We had a neighbor was the big farmhouse was Dumont's, and they had almost all of, pretty well, I guess the railroad owned it. They had all the property quite a bit, almost to Baker's Basin Road, and they had part of where Allen Lane, and they had they called it the Meadow, and there's houses in there, and the railroad would slowly sell property, and whatever they paid for rent, they would still maintain it, and the property was getting smaller and smaller. And then they finally got wiped out when they had to put the high tension lines up there, which is runs over the top of the property, and they tore it all out. But they had like 30 cows, that was the thing when I saw all that work that dude was doing a farm work. I never wanted to be a farmer. The guy there was never no end to work in a farm.
No,
It was.
holiday.
In other words, they would have to hurry up and get the hay in before it got wet and something else and plant this, and it's like something was going to freeze. And that wasn't for me. And then we had quarter of a mile down the other way, which is you'd go into Hamilton Township. Most of my friends, after I went out of, they were all in, I mean, they were closer to in Hamilton Township. You know that.
Then when you went to work, what did you have for lunch? Did you bring your lunch with you?
Yeah, I did. It was always a sandwich, I guess, or something. Always some kind. Always had to have goodies though. Always need goodies.
But in general, I mean,
Well,
did you bring a lunchbox or a bag or what?
It was a lunch. I then ate it, but there was a lot of stuff that you couldn't get during the war. I'd stop in East Trenton, and there was no big stores even around here. Down the end of the street, there was a store here.
On Havis and
No, even here. No,
The ice cream store? Mrs.
Emily's.
Mrs. Emily's?
yeah.
Because almost every block had a little store. And even on Pear Street, there was a place where there was a store there. And I'd stop with the bicycle, and every now and then I should get some Hershey syrup and stuff. You know, every now and then they would have something in the stores, and you could bring home. But
So it was a matter of luck if they had
Yeah,
something in
sometimes
the
it wouldn't
store
be.
that you could buy.
But you were limited with certain things you could buy. And I remember they were saying that Roosevelt called all the gold in, but we never had no gold to call in, so we didn't have to worry about that. Because
He wanted the people to, if they had gold.
if they demanded it, you would get fined. And
Oh.
the only thing they would let you have is certain rings or little trinkets and stuff.
So why did they want the gold?
I guess it would ruin the value of it, because gold keeps its value, and I guess they depreciated the money, I guess for war and all that. So somebody would come out too far ahead, I guess. But all the gold was called in. And actually, right now, some people are getting in trouble. there's some gold pieces that some people saved, and now they say you should have never had that. So now some of this stuff is coming up now. Yeah, so
When did you move to where you are now, on the corner of Ohio and Valley Forge? When did you move there?
53 I moved there, and there was no sewers here. No, everybody had something in the backyard, sewer pipes and septic tanks. I don't know where they were here, but when I was working on the house, they were just at the time when they start putting the lines in the streets, and I was lucky that the building plumbing inspector from Lawrence, well, he was a hell of a nice guy, and he says when you start putting your plumbing in, don't run it to the backyard, run it towards the front. And then you would be, because within a year that they would be having it. So I had like 2 55-gallon drums in the front, and that would do it. But and all at once the township come up and says that you have to hook in them sewers. It would be $25 fine, and it was so much. In other words, every day after it was like, if you don't hook in there, it was like rush job. So it was like
you built your own house?
I had a shell, and then I did all the work inside. You know, and all the plaster and electrical and plumbing, all that.
Was that fairly common in this neighborhood for people to buy a lot and then build their own house?
Yeah, it was pretty well. Yeah, because I had a lot of friends that I worked with, and they were all into that. They did that too. They were, and even I remember working even on Putman Avenue, a house where, and I remember helped doing the roof. They started to build it, and it was laid idle for a while, and we put the rafters and stuff, you know, so, you know, where Joe Gazzini, I don't know if you remember where he lived, and Frank Rotunda. Yeah. So their houses were about the same time.
And so when did you and Doc get married?
1950.
Oh, and so you had a house 3 years after you got married?
Well, that lot was his sister's lot. And they were going to build a house there, but her husband got killed in service.
I killed in Italy during the war.
Oh.
And so the lot was there. So that's how we got him.
Oh.
So when we moved on, we had a place on Greenwood Avenue, apartment. I couldn't wait to get out of there. It was the apartments they had. They made so cheaply. There were about 20 apartments, and they had 2 thermostats for 10 on each side. And in other words, if somebody opened the door and let the heat, you know, the thing would get so hot you would have to open it. And if nobody was home, the house would get like a cold box.
Do you remember in 1950, what was the rent for your apartment? Can you remember that?
Yeah, I think
The rent?
Yes.
How much did it cost on Greenwood Avenue?
About $65.
60. But in other words, if they furnished to put the furniture, it would have been 85,000.
Yeah.
85.
Just-
And that included the heat?
Yeah,
A little kitchen and a little bathroom and one big bed.
a real small refrigerator. I guess when it got hot, you didn't have much. You know.
But it was new when we moved in there.
Oh.
Well, at the same time, they were building the steel mill in Morrisville, and it was a big thing going on, and they had people come from all over, and they rented them in there. And then as the job got done, the people just left. But the steel mill was a big operation that they would bulldoze the houses and set them on fire to make the steel mill, and they never even hooked the electric system. They just pushed it up. It was that fast.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's Fairless Hills?
Yeah, it was a big thing. Because I worked there in '53, I think it was, in the steel mill.
What other jobs have you had after that? Like, where else did you work?
I worked 50 million jobs, but I worked at Crescent Wire, we made BX wire. And I worked at John Motors, I think 3 times, we need the car parts. And electric, and where?
General Electric.
Yeah, General Electric, and then it was bought out by Train, and I still continue working there. And Electric Thermic, they made stuff ovens that you can melt for foundries, but then they moved out. Well, when I worked at General Electric, they were telling me that it was a sure thing I was going to work there, and we kept getting laid off. It was like
Strikes, yeah.
strikes and laid off, and and the last time I worked at John Motors, which when my younger daughter was born there, and it was around Christmas time, and he says, we got work for you for a month, he says, and he says, after Christmas, and he said, we'll see what happens. And there was never no layoff after that. It was like a gone thing. But there was layoffs and strike. They had problems with the washing machine. They had oil leaks and everything. It was like, there was.
But you always managed to make do.
Yeah, I had part-time jobs. I worked on the roofs, on houses, and anything came along I would do. But I kept things moving. And to work on your own house, it was enough too. Yeah.
Well, you're very talented, and you're very informative. You remember so many interesting things. So, you have something else? Anybody on you?
How did you get to be the park superintendent of Nash Park?
Well, there was like 5 people. We were all involved in it. Kishaleski and Newman. Do you remember Newman?
Yeah.
And
Mrs. Nash.
Charlie Welch.
Charlie, yeah. And Mrs. Nash.
Yeah, and
I knew.
And Newman moved away, and everybody else died except me. So that's how I got it. I was left. And if you want it done, there's nobody else you can ask. It was me. So I want to see that park maintained. It's.
He calls the township up every now and then and tells them to come over there and clean it out because he can't do it no more by himself.
Oh, but in the last time I called, grass was going way up, and I complained, and I asked the guy, that works there, and I says I was going to call the town hall, and he says don't do it because they're afraid of losing their job too, and he says they had somebody with a rotor cup out and somebody else, but. The guy was doing it, and ever since then, they haven't done a trip. They did a good job over there. And I think they even have some summer help, and it's well kept now, because otherwise.
Sometimes a good phone call gets a lot of action.
Yeah.
But you do a lot, Walt, and thank you for talking tonight. Anya, did you want to ask anything, or we left anything out? Gary? Thank you, Walt.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now I have coffee or cold
Oh, no.
tea.
No.